Chapter 80. Go to the city to buy a few sets of test papers? If not tonight, come back tomorrow afternoon? That was making a mountain out of a molehill. Most importantly, she did not want to travel with Xia Jinyuan at all. She was rejecting him wholeheartedly. How could the perceptive Xia Jinyuan not notice? However, going to the city was unavoidable. He had to take her to the Public Security Bureau to identify her. Xiu raised his eyebrows slightly. The smile on his face was a little reckless. I started driving when I was 11 years old. It's been 9 years since then. So you can rest assured. When he spoke to Principal Chen, his carefree attitude disappeared and was replaced by a serious expression. Uncle Chen, don't worry. I promise to send you back safely tomorrow afternoon. Yi Qian was still in a daze even after the car had driven dozens of kilometers. She sat there with a cold expression and did not even look at him. Xia Jinyuan was not angry. Instead, he glanced at her from time to time. Xia Jinyuan waited until the car drove out of the winding national highway in the mountains and got on the highway to the city. He then said slowly, "It seems that I have offended you again. Your little face is as tense as a bullet." "I'm not angry. I just don't want to talk to you." Yi Qian rubbed his eyebrows and leaned against the pillow. He said indifferently, "I gave you the gun. Why do you have to make me go to the city? Moreover, you didn't ask for my permission before this." So that was the reason. Xia Jinyuan smiled and apologized to her. "I did need to take you to the city. I'm really sorry for not telling you in advance." "Captain Xia, I don't like someone making decisions for me when I don't know anything." Yi Qian interrupted him rudely. He turned his head and looked at him coldly. "I really don't like it." At this moment, Xia Jinyuan realized that he had stepped on this girl's minefield. The smile on Jun Yan's face faded slightly. When he spoke again, his clear voice was filled with absolute respect for Yi Qian. "I'm very sorry, Yi Qian. I only cared about considering things from my own perspective and did not consider your feelings. That's right. I can't look at this little girl as if she's a minor. I have to treat her as an adult. About the pistol, I still need you to go back to the Public Security Bureau with me. Don't worry, you won't be implicated. If the Public Security Bureau wants to know where the pistol went, they need a record. The Municipal Public Security Bureau only gave me 24 hours, so I have to take you back tonight," Xia Jinyuan said seriously, explaining the whole thing very thoroughly. And his apology and respect made Yi Qian understand his position. Although his expression was still cold, at least they could continue the conversation normally. "I also need to apologize. I should have handed it over in time." Yi Qian was not an unreasonable person. On the contrary, she had a very clear personality. Actually, when she heard that he had to go to the city, she had already guessed something. The coldness she displayed was only to let the other party know what her persistence and her principles were. Her predecessor had suffered a loss because of her lack of persistence, so she had been defeated her whole life. In this life, she had to let everyone who knew her know that she had her own persistence and principles. No one could change her. Chapter 81. They set off at 6 in the evening and didn't enter the city until 11 at night. Xia Jinyuan looked at the city's night sky. There were flashes of lightning in the clouds at the end of the sky. It seemed that there would be a heavy rainstorm in the sky. He didn't wake up Yi Qian, who had already slept for a few hours. He smiled and drove into the gas station. When the car stopped, Yi Qian woke up with a start. His eyes were clear and there was no hint of drowsiness in them. This was a sign of alertness. The moment he opened his eyes, his mind was absolutely awake. Looking at the flashing clouds in the sky, Yi Qian frowned and said, "There's going to be a storm. How long until we get to the police station?" "We'll be there in 20 minutes. The bathroom is in front and the convenience store is next door." After turning off the engine, Xia Jinyuan took out his wallet and handed it to Yi Qian. "We need something to fill our stomachs. The police station is famous for being stingy. We won't even get a meal when we get there." He was indeed hungry. Yi Qian took the black wallet that still had his body temperature and went to the convenience store. He bought 2 bottles of milk and 2 packets of wafers and walked out with the bags. In front of her, a man and a woman pushed the door open, talking and laughing. Yi Jian had already retreated to the side, but the man who was flirting with the woman did not avoid her at all. His shoulder directly bumped into Yi Jian. A faint smell of gunpowder wafted over. Yi Jian saw a small black handle in the man's flipped sports jacket. It was a Ruger KP-94 handgun made of stainless steel and fired 9x19mm bullets. Yi Jian could tell what kind of gun it was just by looking at the handle. The unique characteristic of the gun was that its parts, from the sleeve, barrel, handle, and socket holder, to the small parts inside, were all made of stainless steel. Illegal gun possession. Yi Jian couldn't help but take a second look. As soon as they walked out of the convenience store, a flash of lightning appeared in the sky, followed by a sudden clap of thunder. The power of nature instantly shook people's hearts. The torrential rain fell without warning. Pa-pa, the sound of the rain hitting the ground could be heard. In the blink of an eye, the entire city was shrouded in a curtain of rain. When Yi Jian returned to the car, he whispered to Xia Jinyuan, who had gotten into the car after him, "I met a man and a woman in the convenience store just now. The man had a Ruger KP-94. I've memorized his appearance. Do you have a pen and paper? I can draw him for you to see." After a pause, he continued, "The man looks a little similar to Brother Fei. The only difference is that he's a little younger. The way he speaks doesn't sound like a Chinese. Instead, he sounds like he grew up overseas." Xia Jinyuan, who was about to start the car, took out a pen from his pocket. Then he turned around and easily picked up the plastic bag on the back seat. He took out a book from the bag and flipped to the last page. He pointed at a blank page and said in a deep voice, "Draw it and show it to me." His slightly cold voice sounded even colder and fiercer in the sound of the rain. Brother Fei has always had contacts overseas, but they haven't been able to break through yet. Short hair, a scar on the left ear. Yi Jian took the pen and started drawing on the blank page. He first drew the characteristics, then the facial features. Next, he noted the height, approximate height, what kind of clothes they wore, what kind of shoes they wore, and even the color of their socks. In the convenience store, after the man with the strange accent asked some questions, he bought 2 packs of cigarettes and walked out with a sexy woman in his arms. He didn't immediately get into the car. Instead, he looked at the sudden torrential rain and a trace of malice flashed across his face. Chapter 82. The portrait of the man was finished. Xia Jinyuan glanced at it and his handsome face instantly turned as cold as a sword. He glanced at the empty gas station and pursed his lips as he said to Yi Jian, "We need to go on an adventure. Do you want to prepare yourself?" "Don't worry about me. I can still protect myself." Yi Jian closed the book and put it aside without even looking at what book it was. He picked up the second book. This time he saw it clearly. It was a book about war and soldiers. Why would he read such an entry-level military book? As this thought flashed through his mind, he quickly started drawing the woman's facial features. The car had already driven into the heavy rain. In order to catch up with the imported car, the car sped up instantly. The momentum was so strong that Yi Jian's entire body fell in front of the windshield. However, the pen in her hand was steady. Not a single stroke was out of place. After the woman's portrait was finished, Xia Jinyuan removed a communication device from the roof of the car. He drove with one hand and pressed a special contact number. After the call is connected, get them to contact the city's transportation team. Have them monitor all electronic devices in the city. At a sharp turn, Xia Jinyuan handed the communication device with a flashing red light to Yi Jian. "Make it short. Just say what you want to say." A few seconds later, the flashing red light turned green and a capable voice answered. Yi Jian heard Xia Jinyuan say something like, "Q King." The voice of the person on the phone suddenly became very serious. "J7 Roger. Dongfeng North Road, BMW U67689. 2 suspects have been found. Transportation team assistance. Target locked." A cold female voice replaced Xia Jinyuan's voice. The person on the other end of the communication device immediately knew that there was someone else in Q King's car. And it was a girl. Xia Jinyuan didn't pay attention to her. The car made 2 turns and caught up with the imported BMW, which was also speeding through the rain. The heavy rain obstructed the view and also increased the risk factor. If the car was too fast, it was very likely that it would slip and roll over. At this time, Yiqian could only trust the driver. Yiqian took the pistol out of the compartment and said to Xia Jinyuan, who was focused on driving, "There are no cars on the road. If we follow closely, there is a high chance that we will be discovered. It would be best if we could destroy the wheels." "How confident are you?" Obviously, he had listened to her suggestion, but he wasn't sure if she was confident or not. Yiqian loaded the gun and raised it. He narrowed his eyes and took aim. His lips curled into a smile as he said, "The gun is a little old, but the accuracy is not bad. As for the confidence, even if it's not 100%, it's at least 99%. No, I need to be 100% confident," Xia Jinyuan said coldly and stepped on the accelerator again. The sound of the motor increased, and even the thunder in front of them did not slow down the speed of the car. Fortunately, it was a military jeep. Although it looked no different from an ordinary car, its performance was excellent. When they reached the next intersection, the imported BMW suddenly turned left and rushed onto another road. J7's voice came from the communication device. "The target car has been locked. It is now entering Princess Road. Q King, please note that there are factories under construction north of Princess Road. There are no surveillance devices at the moment." They needed to force the imported BMW onto another road. They definitely couldn't go north of Princess Road. Yiqian looked at the road sign that flashed by. His delicate lips pursed and his eyes darkened. "It's too late. We have already entered Princess Road. The target has been discovered." Chapter 83. Whether or not they were discovered was secondary. The most important thing was that they had to apprehend the suspect in the car. Regardless of whether he was Fei Jiyi's overseas contact or not, he still had to be arrested for illegally carrying a gun. North of Princess Road was an area that had been redeveloped in the city over the past 2 years. It was also an electronic industrial zone. Not only were many buildings still under construction, but some residential areas were also under construction. The only fortunate thing was that there were few people and it was raining in the middle of the night, so the possibility of endangering the safety of the people was much lower. They didn't have a map, not even a planning map, so it would undoubtedly affect the arrest. Xia Jinyuan wasn't very familiar with the traffic in the city and relied on the help of the traffic brigade. Yiqian didn't pay attention to the road ahead. Instead, she stared at the road signs on both sides of the road. The speed of the car and the torrential rain didn't affect her. In the blink of an eye, she had already accurately reported the road sign that she had just seen clearly. Princess Road North Avenue, Huanzhong intersection. The road sign standing in the heavy rain was at least 500 meters away from them. In the blink of an eye, Yiqian accurately reported the location. 5 kilometers, Chuyuan intersection. Right, Chuli Road is Broken Head Road. Both sides are flattened bases. As J7's report came through the communication device, Xia Jinyuan, who was tailing the suspect's car, accelerated to 250 kilometers per hour. The entire car was like an arrow released from a bow, rushing out in the rain with a fierce momentum. Yiqian, who was still fearless, gripped the communication device tightly. Her clear and childish voice contained a calmness that shouldn't be present at 14 years old. She said calmly, "Please dictate all the traffic plans north of Princess Road." Xia Jinyuan glanced at her from the corner of his eye. This girl wants to draw a map in her mind. If it were someone else, Xia Jinyuan would definitely smile faintly and not take it to heart. But for Yiqian, even though she was only 14 years old, her calm demeanor that was as deep as water and as clear as water made people think that there was nothing that could stop her. This girl had a coldness that surpassed her peers. She wasn't impulsive, only calm and indifferent. Her splendor that was like water and mountain was already eye-catching enough to make people look up to her. As J7 spoke, Yiqian's brain worked like a high-speed computer. What she needed, as well as what Xia Jinyuan needed, appeared in her mind. A map. The speed of the BMW is 256, The distance is 800 meters. Increase the speed to 280. We can catch up in 2 minutes. Not only did a map appear in his mind, but he also calculated accurately in his mind and reported a set of data. In 5 minutes, speed 280 kilometers per hour and force the other party into Tsiuli Road. What did Yi Qian do the most in his previous life? He was running away. The only way to escape safely was to memorize every street in every place. How could carrying a computer be more convenient than carrying one's own brain? She had to familiarize herself with the streets, exits, and small paths once she was in a place. Her many years of habit had finally become the capital she relied on to survive. It had also become an ability that ordinary people could not compare to. Xia Jinyuan's immature voice was firm and confident. Xia Jinyuan's choice was to trust him. Remember, Yi Qian, I need you to be 100% sure. Xia Jinyuan reiterated again and began to increase the speed of the car. Chapter 84. The maximum speed of the modified military jeep was 290 kilometers per hour. If it reached 280 kilometers per hour, the slightest problem at the front would cause the entire car to overturn. The corners of Yi Jian's lips curled up slightly as she said indifferently, 100% confident. If you believe in it, then I believe in it. Her indifferent voice was still calm, and even a little indifferent and lazy. She was really not afraid. Facing the possibility of death, she would face it calmly. Xia Jinyuan's lips curled up, and his dark eyes were full of admiration for her. This little girl is really not bad. Old Master Zhen and Uncle Chen had put in so much effort to cultivate her. Their foresight was indeed unique. A piece of unpolished jade had already been polished to the luster that a piece of fine jade should have. There was no need to doubt whether this little girl could make a name for herself. He absolutely believed that she would succeed in the future. 256 kilometers per hour, 260 kilometers per hour, 270 kilometers per hour. Yi Qian stared at the changing speed on the dashboard and tacitly agreed that it had reached 60 seconds. Under Xia Jinyuan's calm gaze, the distance between the car and the speeding BMW narrowed. In the BMW, the sexy girl turned her head to look at the jeep that was about to run parallel to them. There was no fear on her beautiful face. Instead, she giggled and said to the man driving, "Jason, they've caught up. It looks like they won't let go." I couldn't ask for more. The man laughed out loud, and his cold face was filled with madness. They actually lost so many people in such a small place. If I don't teach them a lesson, how can I quench my anger? The girl's laughter grew louder. Her hand with bright red nail polish gently stroked Jason's thin face. There was a trace of coldness in her beautiful eyes, like that of a venomous snake. Jason quickly glanced to his left, gritted his teeth, and cursed, "Damn it." Without slowing down, he made a sharp right turn and rushed into Chuyuan Road. The tires screeched against the ground, and water splashed everywhere. Under the high pressure, the water was compressed into mist, instantly blurring the line of sight of the cars behind. The two cars sped up to the highest speed on the empty road. They were both ruthless and willing to risk their lives. Yi Jian loosened the safety buckle on the front passenger seat and bent over to the back seat. She looked like a soldier who had calmly walked onto the battlefield. She was counting softly with a cold expression on her face. 1, 2, 3. The car window was lowered, and the rain poured into the car. In a second, Yi Qian's face and hair were all wet. With a cold expression, she stuck a loaded pistol out of the car window. At the same time, Xia Jinyuan accelerated to 290 kilometers per hour and rushed in from the right side of the BMW. This was the second time the two of them had worked together. With the prior communication and the trust they had built, the tacit understanding throughout the entire process was as natural as flowing clouds and flowing water. Yi Qian aimed at the BMW's rear wheel. Her dark eyes were filled with cold tears. The speed of the car, the impact of the wind, the impact of the drag. The string of numbers flashed through her mind like jumping cymbals. Then she fired without hesitation. Compared to the sound of thunder and torrential rain, the sound of gunfire seemed insignificant. After a bang, sparks flew everywhere. The BMW, whose tires had been shot, lost control and flipped to one side. It made an ear-piercing sound of metal rubbing against each other as it spun toward the construction site on the right side of Chuyuan Road. Chapter 85. Jason and the beautiful woman in the car had never imagined that they would be forced to stop in such a way. After the car flipped over, it spun like a top and rushed to the side of the road. At this time, the high-performance car reflected the value of the price. The airbags popped out and surrounded the two people. Even if the sky and earth were turned upside down, at least their brains were not damaged. Moreover, the car was going straight towards the foundation of the car. In the heavy rain, the foundation of the soil had become exceptionally soft, which obstructed the strong spinning force and protected the people in the car. The reason Yi Qian climbed to the back was because the two of them agreed that when the right side of the car was hit, the driver would quickly do something that would benefit him if there was no way to turn the steering wheel towards his left side. Reality proved that this was indeed the case. Behind the car was a scene of sparks flying everywhere, but inside the car, Yi Qian closed the car window again, put away his pistol, and wiped the rain off his face. Qing Yan's face lit up with a faint smile. Done, I'm 100% sure. She wouldn't gamble on anything that wasn't 100% certain. Gambling was something that needed to be judged according to the situation. Why should she gamble on something like this, which was completely dependent on her ability? Xia Jinyuan, who had already stepped on the brakes, turned the car around and returned to the scene after the car had traveled 200 meters due to inertia. Hearing this, she raised her clear voice and said happily, "Well done." It was so beautiful that it was impeccable. The car stopped in the heavy rain. Xia Jinyuan didn't immediately get out of the car to check. Instead, he said to Yi Qian, "With your ability to adapt, it shouldn't be too difficult for you to drive." If anything happened, she could still drive away immediately. As a soldier, Xia Jinyuan was used to arranging an escape route. As Yi Qian raised his eyebrows slightly, he had already started explaining how to start the car and how to drive. Refuel, brake, one to go, the other to stop. You can control the steering wheel yourself. Turn left, turn right. Listening to his explanation, Yi Jian sighed softly in her heart. She thought to herself, this is probably the most irresponsible driving instructor in the world. It's obvious that he's leaving the students to fend for themselves. You mean, you get out of the car and I'll watch from the parking lot? Yi Qian sat there patiently while looking out the window. However, he didn't intend to let him go. He looked at him with a faint smile and said, "I don't think this behavior is out of responsibility for my safety. Captain Xia, we have fought together twice. We can't be considered comrades, but we can still be considered partners." Yi Qian did not say anything else. He believed that with his intelligence, he would definitely understand what he was trying to say. How could he not understand? He had experienced how poisonous the little girl's mouth was. However, when it came to such matters, Xia Jinyuan kept the faint smile at the corner of his lips and spoke in a cold tone as if he was speaking to his own soldiers. "Yi Qian, I order you to stay put and wait for further orders. Apart from being a business partner, you are also a student. Even though I have seen your ability and strength, I am a soldier. You are a soldier and you are a student. Soldiers protect the country, and the meaning of home is you. Your family, your friends. This is my duty, and it is also our principle as a soldier." Chapter 86. What was a soldier? Soldiers were the cornerstone of a country. They were born in peace, but they could die in war. When the horn was blown and the war song was played, they who guarded the country would definitely be at the forefront. Soldiers were the most intimidating and lethal people in a country. They were worthy of dying for the sake of war. Even if they died for the people, their souls would still be there. Yi Qian looked at Xia Jinyuan, whose gaze was cold and hard, but who used his life to explain what a soldier was. The faint smile on her face gradually disappeared. It was no longer casual but filled with respect. He nodded his head lightly and only said one word, "Okay." It was a promise and also a guarantee. Good girl. Xia Jinyuan stretched out his hand and smiled. Stay here. I'll be back soon. Also, call the ambulance. After he finished speaking, he opened the car door, got out of the car with a cold gaze, and walked into the torrential rain. His tall and slender figure was as imposing as a mountain. With the indomitable spirit of a soldier, he walked toward the overturned BMW. Yi Jian quietly looked at the back view that was as majestic as a mountain. She hummed softly, "You won't know me in the age of white pigeons flying. My name isn't as prominent as the stars. In the days when the smoke of war is gone, you won't pay attention to me. My story will be drowned out by the song." In the most dangerous times, there was always a group of people who rushed to the front and shielded you from the wind and rain. Major Xia Jinyuan, who had rushed into the rain, was one of the members of that group. After dialing 120 for the ambulance, Yi Qian, who stayed in the car, felt that time was passing very slowly. He was suffering. He quietly looked outside and watched Xia Jinyuan, who was bending over to check the situation inside the car with a flashlight. The rain had already soaked him, but it didn't affect his cautious actions. After checking, he climbed to the car door that was facing the sky. After a while, Yi Qian saw him open the door. Seeing this, Yi Qian was already frightened. He knew that Xia Jinyuan would definitely check carefully before opening the door, but he still couldn't help but worry. Without hesitation, he opened the car door and rushed out in the heavy rain. She just walked over and stood behind the car. She raised her head and didn't even blink when the rain poured into her eyes. Her dark eyes looked at the man standing on top of the platform, who was as imposing as a god. She said softly, "The relationship between the people and the people is as thick as water. Comrade soldier, occasionally, as civilians, we can also be your backing. Isn't that right?" At the very least, she would stand here and watch for him. Once there was danger, he would rush forward without hesitation. Protecting us is your unshirkable responsibility. Then, please allow me to contribute my meager strength to you. The girl's voice was not loud. It was clearly as light as dripping water, but it carried a power that could penetrate stone, allowing him to clearly hear every word she said. Those clear and calm eyes quietly looked at him. In her eyes, he had already seen the most beautiful scenery in the world. His thin lips slightly raised, Xia Jinyuan smiled and said, "You're a very stubborn partner. I really have no reason to reject you." The first person to be dragged out was the beautiful woman who had fainted. In her hand, she was holding a delicate and small pistol, which was obviously specially made in the military factory. The gun was confiscated, the bullets were removed, and the person was dragged to the side. Yi Qian, who was standing in front of the car, shone his flashlight so that Xia Jinyuan, who had already entered the car, could easily drag out the other suspect. Seeing that the unconscious man was about to be dragged out, Yi Qian suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. Chapter 87. Seeing that the unconscious man was about to be dragged out, Yi Qian suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. Inside the car, Xia Jinyuan shouted in a deep voice, "Get out of the way!" Yi Jian, who had sensed the impending danger, arched her body and leaped forward like a nimble cat when she heard his shout. The glamorous woman, who had thought that it would be easy to sneak up on a little girl, was visibly surprised. She let out a soft, "Eh." Without pausing, she raised her leg and kicked Yi Qian again. In the thick yellow mud, Yi Jian nimbly flipped over twice in a row and was already squatting on the ground. Like a cheetah, she looked coldly at the beautiful woman who had ambushed her twice in a row. He shone the flashlight directly at the woman's face and turned on the strong light mode. In the blink of an eye, Yi Jianting jumped up with a cold look in his eyes. He attacked the beautiful woman who was holding an extremely thin silver wire in her hand. Inside the car, Xia Jinyuan, who had just heaved a sigh of relief, saw that Yi Qian had actually taken the initiative to attack. His heartstrings tightened again. He didn't know if she could handle the suspect. He was still dragging the other suspect, so he let go without hesitation. He bent his body and retreated outside, intending to help Yi Qian. It turned out that the unconscious Jason had opened his eyes groggily after being dragged, pulled, and let go. They weren't injured, but they had fainted due to the lack of oxygen in the high-speed rotation. Now that he had woken up, his first instinct was to pull out his gun and shoot at the side of the car door. Xia Jinyuan saw Yi Qian fighting outside. Seeing that she was fierce, he relaxed slightly and punched the man who was still trying to pull out his gun. His fist landed on the man's nose, easily causing him to bleed. The car flipped sideways. The fight between the two adult men in the car caused the whole car to shake. With a bang, the car fell and flipped back. The tremor made Yi Jian feel as if the entire ground was trembling. She didn't look back, but focused on dealing with the glamorous woman who was holding an extremely tough silver wire. In the army, she had fought with soldiers before, but this was the first time she had fought with criminals. She wasn't afraid, only slightly excited. The restless fighting spirit in her body became restless, and it struggled even more with Yi Qian's punches. Standing in the rainy night, Yi Qian, who hadn't even had her period, was no different from a child in the eyes of the other party. There was no need to be afraid of her. The glamorous woman flipped the wet hair on her forehead and smiled coquettishly. "Little girl, why aren't you properly in school? Why are you joining the fight with a soldier? I'm not your teacher. Little girl, you're really unlucky to have met me." As she spoke, she narrowed her eyes slightly, and a trace of coldness flowed out from the corners of her eyes. The silver wire in her hand, which was made of a special material and was usually used as a hairband, was gently pulled between her two hands. Yi Qian seemed to hear the zheng-zheng sound of the silver wire. The corners of Yi Qian's mouth curled up slightly. Although he was small, his aura was not small. He smiled coldly and said, "Sister, you're old, and I happen to be the kind of person who doesn't want to respect old people. So, you're really unlucky to have met me." Chapter 88. It was raining heavily, and under the dim yellow light of the street lamps, the woman in front of him still had to tidy up her messy hair from time to time. It was obvious that she paid a lot of attention to her image. Usually, people like her had a common problem. They were only allowed to call her young, but not old. Calling her old was like stepping on a landmine. It would explode with one step. As expected, the woman's expression immediately twisted when she heard that. Her delicate makeup was washed away by the rain, and her expression was so twisted. She really wasn't a young woman. "Little girl, you're asking for it." The woman took a step forward with her long legs, pulled the silver wire in her hand, and wrapped it around Yi Qian's neck. She wanted to use the shortest time possible to get rid of this silly little girl who mocked her for being old. This was a woman who was used to killing people and had no sense of guilt. Her indifference to human life could be seen from her twisted expression. Little did she know that this silly little girl was a thorn that couldn't be touched. Yi Qian calmed down slightly. His gaze swept past the silver wire in the woman's hand that could be wrapped around his neck at any time. The moment she rushed over, he kicked the woman's thigh fiercely. Then, using her big foot as a support point, she stepped on the other party's leg and soared into the air. Using her right knee, she fiercely hit the girl's chin with a majestic force. His agile body spun like a swallow, then landed nimbly on the ground. The moment he appeared, he dealt a heavy blow to his opponent. If Xia Jinyuan didn't want to capture Jason alive, he would have clapped his hands and cheered. The beautiful woman was hit by Yi Qian on the spot. Her chin hurt as if her bones were fractured, and she saw stars in front of her eyes. "Damn it! I'm going to kill you today." Knowing that she had underestimated her opponent, the woman covered her chin and spat out a mouthful of bloody phlegm. She looked at Yi Qian warily and took off her tight denim jacket. Yi Qian was someone who wasn't afraid of threats. He wasn't afraid in his previous life, and he definitely wouldn't be afraid in this life. Hearing this, her delicate lips curved slightly. "I don't think there's a chance that you can kill me. If you don't believe me, you can try." He purposely added a hint of provocation in his words. His gaze was locked on the silver wire in the other party's hand that occasionally flashed with a cold light under the street lamp. Her gaze was heavy and cold, and the rain-stained face of Ming Yen contained a ruthlessness that did not match her age. When the girl, who was originally extremely confident, met her gaze, it made her heart tremble for no reason. If we can win, then we don't have to give them a chance to rebuild their confidence. While Uncle Jen's words echoed in his mind, Yi Qian, who had seen clearly and remembered how his opponent nimbly pulled the silver thread in his hand, was like a cheetah in its first battle. It flashed its sharp claws and attacked again. Although it was his first battle, he had trained with the elite soldiers in the army. Perhaps it was because she had been tainted with the ruthlessness of a soldier in battle, but her clear eyes were also filled with ruthlessness. The best defense was an offense. If she was confident that she could win, then she had to win beautifully. Next to them, Xia Jinyuan, who had just finished the fight, knocked out the suspect and tied him up with clothes. Then he looked at the ruthless girl with interest. She was like a little cheetah, beating her enemy until he was in a sorry state. The beautiful woman had gone from her initial arrogance to fighting back in a sorry state. The thin silver wire in her hand had always been her life-saving and killing weapon, but this time it was useless. There were a few times when she almost injured her hands. Chapter 89. The girl's punching routine was sanda, which was integrated into the Japanese taekwondo routine. Therefore, she used more kicks than punches. Even Yi Qian couldn't bear to end such a rare battle. Grandpa Jen once said that theory and actual combat were indispensable. Sometimes, a powerful battle was better than understanding countless theory books. Xia Jinyuan could tell that she had intentionally prolonged the battle at the end so that she could use all the techniques she had learned on her opponent. A smart girl always had a smart way of doing things. That student over there, don't treat people like cats. Don't forget, we still have serious business to attend to. He laughed and raised his voice. He also wanted her to have more actual combat experience, but time was a little tight. He still had to send her back to school tomorrow. The girl was still growing. If she got wet, she might get sick. One was fighting with ease, while the other was watching from the sidelines. The girl, who was already at a disadvantage, became even more flustered. Faced with this little girl who was clearly still a child, but had such a ruthless gaze, she couldn't help but feel a trace of uncertainty when she kicked. Her long leg swept over again. It looked like she had already dodged Yi Qian. Ming Yan's face lifted slightly, but there was a sinister smile. She said to the girl, "Sorry, your leg is quite powerful. I'm sure you can escape quickly." She smiled slightly, but her words were filled with bloodthirst. "So, I have to destroy it." Her smile faintly contained a hint of bloodthirst. The girl, whose heart couldn't help but tremble, sensed the approaching danger. In her panic, she actually tried to retract her long leg. How could she possibly give her the chance to escape? Yi Qian's dark eyes were cold. He moved as fast as lightning, his right hand grabbing the girl's ankle. Amidst the girl's scream, Yi Qian's left hand formed into a palm. Holding rainwater, he viciously and fiercely struck her knee. As a person who had experienced life and death, Yi Qian, who had seen through life and death, couldn't possibly have the heart of a saint, no matter how young his body was. Or rather, it was laughably compassionate. In front of her was a criminal who was indifferent to human life and said that he wanted to kill. How could she show mercy to a criminal? Amidst the girl's shrill screams, Yi Jian, with a cold expression, grabbed both of her hands and clasped them behind her back. She then picked up the denim shirt that the girl had thrown aside and tied it up beautifully. "Little girl, you've learned quite a lot. Come, tell me, is there anything you don't know?" Xia Jinyuan looked at Yi Qian, who even tied a knot like a professional. While admiring him, he also thought, his talent is amazing. In less than a month's time, he had undergone an astonishing transformation, as if he had been reborn. With a smile, Yi Qian let go of the girl who was still screaming in pain. She clapped her hands and said indifferently, "There's one more thing." She paused intentionally, and there was a hint of ruthlessness in her smile. "I don't know how to kill." The smile on Xia Jinyuan's thin lips faded slightly. Then, with a hint of heaviness in his voice, he sighed softly and said, "If possible, no one wants to learn how to kill. Little girl, but as long as I walk down the path that Captain Xia once walked, I think learning how to kill is only a matter of time." Compared to the heaviness in his voice, Yiqian was clearly much more relaxed. Chapter 90. The reason why she was so relaxed was because she had come to terms with her past and knew what her goal was. Yiqian looked up and smiled. What's there to be afraid of, even if my hands are stained red with blood, if I kill to protect the peace of the country? Principal Chen and Master Zhen had always taught her that, in order to protect the peace of the country, and to protect the dignity of the country, even if her hands were stained with blood and she became the target of the enemy, what was there to be afraid of? Xia Jinyuan, who did not speak immediately, patted her shoulder gently. He stared at her with his deep dark eyes and said word by word, "Student Yi, remember what you said tonight. When you have a legal gun license, I look forward to fighting alongside you again." Because he said that she did not have a legal gun license, she did not shoot the suspect in the dangerous fight just now, even though she had the opportunity to shoot him dead. From this, he could tell that this was a girl who could restrain herself and had light in her heart. He was worried that the murderous intent in her heart was too strong, but after hearing her words, he immediately felt relieved. "I'll get the police car and ambulance to stop at the intersection. Get in the car first, I'll take care of things here." Xia Jinyuan looked at Yiqian worriedly. Not only was he soaked, but he was also covered in mud. His dark eyes flickered. "Don't go to the Public Security Bureau for now. Go to the reception center to wash up first." Yiqian raised his arm and looked down at himself. He smiled and said, "The first time I met Principal Chen, I stood in the rain for almost an hour during the first class." In other words, this was not a big deal. She was not as delicate as the girls in the capital, nor as arrogant as the girls in the city. Instead, she had the pride to endure hardships, a beautiful heart, and a pair of bright eyes that could see through the vanity of the world. It was a pleasure to talk to such a girl. Sitting in the car, Yiqian looked at Xia Jinyuan, who was still standing in the rain and talking to the soldiers. His majestic back subconsciously fell into her heart. Although she did not want to interact with such a dangerous and charismatic man, she had to admit that he was a very outstanding soldier. When they arrived at the reception center, Xia Jinyuan directly took a set of short sleeves and shorts for female soldiers from the front desk and handed them to Yiqian along with the room card. "Room 306. I'm 307. If you need anything, feel free to contact me." The two of them were only separated by a wall. Yiqian entered the shower and stood under the shower head. She closed her eyes and looked up. Immediately, there was muddy yellow water under her feet. After showering for at least half an hour, Yiqian walked out of the shower. "Xia Jinyuan. Xia Jinyuan." Yiqian, whose hair had not even dried, immediately opened the door. "Aren't you going to rest? I'm here to give you this." He raised his hand and a pair of white sneakers fell into Yiqian's eyes. "You definitely can't wear your shoes tomorrow. I just bought them. See if they fit." Not only did he have shoes, he even prepared socks. Xia Jinyuan did not know if they fit. He lowered his gaze and looked at Yiqian's feet. After a glance, his Adam's apple moved slightly. He immediately looked up and quickly stuffed the shoes and socks into Yiqian's hands. "This little girl's feet are really beautiful. Her skin was so fair that it was like a pink pearl." "Stop, what are you thinking?" Chapter 91. Major Xia, who had always kept a low profile, quickly hid the slight awkwardness in his eyes. There was no trace of abnormality on his elegant face. "Go back to the room and try it on. If you want to change, there's still time." He lowered his gaze slightly again, but he didn't dare to look directly at Yiqian's beautiful bare feet. Instead, he looked at her fair and slender calf. His thin lips were already pursed tightly. Her skin was extremely fair and had a milky, porcelain-like luster. It was so delicate that it seemed as though a slight pressure could leave a scar on it. But now, there was a slight flaw in her fair skin. A bruise that was already purplish-black had appeared very conspicuously on her right calf. Xia Jinyuan glanced at it. His gaze froze, and he suddenly bent down. "Don't move." As Yiqian stepped back, he said coldly, "Let me check if there's any bone damage." Not only was the bruise dark, but it was also very large. He didn't know how this little girl could endure it. His sudden action really stunned Yiqian. She instinctively took a step back, but in the end, his large hand grabbed her ankle and even ordered her not to move. Although she was only 14 in this lifetime, but in her previous lifetime, she was at least 28. Yiqian, who had never been in a relationship before and had her first kiss in both lifetimes, was stunned. She had never been held by a man before. Now that Major Xia's large hand had suddenly grabbed her ankle, even though Yiqian, who had seen through life and death and was indifferent by nature, had a visible flush on her face. She had just taken a hot shower, so her skin was as white and delicate as a peeled egg. That gorgeous flush was like a blooming flower. It was so beautiful that it could take one's breath away. Fortunately, Major Xia's attention was focused on her injury, and he didn't notice anything else. The hand that held Yiqian's ankle had slender fingers and his palm was burning hot. The skin that he was holding seemed to have a higher temperature, so hot that it made Yiqian want to run away. No! Yiqian finally calmed himself down, but he was once again stunned by his next action. He actually knelt down on one knee, his expression focused and serious as he checked his injured calf. Yiqian's slender, jade-like fingers gently pressed on the wound, starting from the outside, then moving to the middle. Yiqian was so embarrassed that his whole body was tense. Xia Jinyuan was holding her ankle, so he knew her body's reaction very well. He knelt on one knee and checked her body. Amused, he said, "You're just a child. Why are you so nervous? I'm just checking for you." It would have been better if she hadn't said anything. The moment she did, Yiqian felt his face burn even more. "There's absolutely no way to do so. Can you just ignore it?" This was the first time a man had held her ankle. She, who had never felt awkward before, really wanted to run away. "If you back off again, I don't mind carrying you to the bed to check." Xia Jinyuan looked up and glanced at her with a smile. A sentence that could cause misunderstandings slowly came out of his thin lips. "Yiqian. Major Xia, how could you say something like that in front of an adult like me? Are you trying to take liberties with me? Do you understand?" Major Xia didn't understand. At the age of 14, it was as though her soul had been blessed. In 2 years, she had skipped grades from middle school to high school. At the age of 16, she had gotten into the best military school with excellent grades and a grand slam in physical fitness. From then on, she had mingled with men. Throughout the year, she had seen more sows than women. Chapter 92. Major Xia didn't understand. At the age of 14, it was like a blessing to her soul. In 2 years, she had skipped all the grades from junior high to senior high school. At the age of 16, she had gotten into the best military school with excellent results and a grand slam in physical fitness. From then on, she had mingled with men. Throughout the year, she had seen more sows than women. He said it jokingly without a trace of disrespect. It was as if he was casually facing Yiqian. Yiqian sighed softly in his heart. Dangerous men really should be kept away from. If he wasn't careful, he would be taken advantage of. She lowered her head and looked down as if she was looking down at him. She could see his clear forehead, and his thick eyelashes that were even thicker than a woman's, and, under his elegant and tall nose, his thin lips that were sometimes sexy and sometimes fierce. When he spoke, his exquisite and elegant features were accompanied by a faint smile. He was so leisurely that it made people reluctant to end the conversation with him. When he held the gun, his gaze was sharp like a sword that could cut through the darkness. His enemies feared him, but as his comrades, they felt safe and trusted him wholeheartedly. After sizing him up for a while, Yiqian quietly looked away. Dangerous men must not be looked at for too long. The longer he looked at him, the more he felt that he was a rare commodity. He would admire him more and more. "Girl, even if you can tolerate it, you shouldn't tolerate it like this." Xia Jinyuan was pressing his fingers around the bruise. He was already pursing his lips. One look and it was obvious that he was in a bad mood. A large area of soft tissue contusions, and the bleeding under the skin is spreading. Don't you feel pain? You've been tolerating it until now? Whether it was his expression or his words, they all expressed his cold displeasure. The middle part is purplish-black and swollen. He pressed his thumb gently and immediately heard Yi Qian's soft gasp from above. He looked up and stared at her with his deep dark eyes. Go to the hospital for an X-ray. Be careful of fractures. Fractures? It wasn't that serious. Yi Qian politely refused with a smile. There are no fractures, but it does hurt a little. Okay. Major Xia's gaze was so cold that it could scratch her skin. She completely refused. Don't think about sleeping tonight. She, who had always known how to survive, immediately softened. She didn't want to be forceful and used a different method to reject him. Indeed, if Yi Qian insisted that he was fine, Xia Jinyuan would have carried him to the hospital without another word. Getting up, Junyan was still serious as he looked at the little girl who was so strong that it made people's heart ache. After a long time, he smiled and said, "Go back to the room and wait for me. I'll get the medicinal oil for you to rub." She didn't have parents who could shelter her from the wind and rain. She had to deal with everything by herself. That was probably why she was so strong. Perhaps it was because of the intense fight in the rainy night, but Yi Qian's cerebral cortex was still excited even after he finished applying the medicinal oil. Lying on the bed, Yi Qian closed his eyes and the scene of him fighting with the girl appeared in his mind. That silver thread was indeed a very good weapon for self-defense, but he didn't know where to get one. As he thought about it, he gradually fell asleep. At 7:30 in the morning, they finished their morning run and had breakfast together before driving to the Municipal Public Security Bureau. The car that was dirty last night had been cleaned and there was still a faint mint smell in it. It was Xia Jinyuan's mint smell. When we get there, you just have to say that you found it. You don't have to say anything else. I'll wait for you outside. Xia Jinyuan didn't forget to remind her again, but he wasn't worried that she would be afraid of anything. This little girl was very brave. Chapter 93. Xia Jinyuan looked at the carefree Yi Jian with a faint smile. She did not have any psychological burden at all. She did not have any psychological burden at all. Indeed, she did not have any psychological burden at all. She did not do anything bad, so why should she be afraid? Before entering the interrogation room, Yi Qian smiled at him and entered the interrogation room with a policewoman and a policewoman. Xia Jinyuan stood outside for about 3 minutes before heading to the bureau chief's office. The bureau chief warmly welcomed Xia Jinyuan and said, "Young Master Xia, please take a seat." His tone was familiar, and it was obvious that they had known each other for many years. After personally making him a cup of tea, Chief Lu sat down and said, "Leader Xia personally called last night. I happened to mention that I saw young Master Xia at the bureau yesterday." Leader Xia smiled and asked young Master Xia to call him when you have time. The Bureau of Public Security was under the jurisdiction of the Provincial Public Security Bureau, and the Provincial Public Security Bureau was under the jurisdiction of the Ministry of Public Security. "Sorry to trouble you, Chief Lu." Xia Jinyuan took the tea that the director personally handed to him. He was born with dignity. Facing the director of the Municipal Public Security Bureau, he was still calm. He took a sip of tea and looked up at Chief Lu's smile. He smiled and said, "There is one thing that I need you to do." He did not say, "please," or "trouble." His need was enough to express his attitude. He had to do it. When Chief Lu heard this, the smile on his face deepened. "Young Master Xia, you are too polite." Young Master Xia has been here for half a year, but this is the first time you need me to do something." Everyone knew that young Master Xia, who was in the military, was the most difficult person in the capital to do favors with. Ever since young Master Xia came to them, many people had been hoping that one day, young Master Xia would open his mouth and ask for something. Who would have thought that after half a year of silence, such a great opportunity would fall into his lap? After Xia Jinyuan finished speaking, Chief Lu laughed heartily. "So that's what you want? No problem at all. I will go get it later. Young Master Xia, please prepare it for me." Thank you, Chief Lu." Xia Jinyuan, who didn't like to be courteous, stood up when he saw that the matter was settled. I have to go and see that girl. She's still a middle school student and is timid. I'm going to give her some courage. He stood up, and Chief Lu naturally had to send him off. However, Xia Jinyuan waved his hand, indicating that he would not allow others to refuse. But Jun Yen still smiled elegantly and said, I still know the way in the bureau. Director Lu, please continue with your work. He had never been a person who liked to be courteous. Director Lu had only come to find him after investigating. Otherwise, he would never have come if there was even the slightest problem. Calm. Calm. In less than 5 minutes, Director Lu had settled the matter. He did not let him send the girl off just now because he wanted him to deal with it as soon as possible, so that he could make it in time to give the girl a surprise. Thank you for your hard work. I am very sorry. I did not think that something I did would cause trouble for you. Yi Qian was a sincere person. Whether it was her words or her expression, they could feel her sincerity. In this aspect, she was very similar to Xia Jinyuan. After saying goodbye to the police, Yi Qian saw Xia Jinyuan, who was standing at the end of the corridor with a cold and arrogant aura. He quickened his pace and walked over. Chapter 94. Xia Jinyuan smiled as he looked at the girl walking towards him. His deep and dark eyes were filled with gentleness. Let's make a trip to the library. We should be back in town before 10. Seeing how she was still chatting and laughing as she said goodbye to the 2 police officers, he knew that this bold girl was not afraid at all. She did not panic like a commoner, nor did she break out in a cold sweat. Yi Qian had never been to the city library before. In her previous life, she had only been to the city bus station. She smiled and said, It shouldn't be too far. I want to buy more materials. She wanted to bring back all the textbooks and test papers for the 3rd year of junior high school. 10 minutes. Xia Jinyuan took a file from Chief Lu and walked slowly and elegantly ahead of her. My personal chauffeur is here. Student Yi, you can give me your orders at any time. Personal chauffeur. Yi Qian thought to herself. She was afraid of causing public outrage if she let a major be her personal chauffeur. When they arrived at the library, Yi Qian went straight to the middle school revision area on the 3rd floor. She picked out 5 sets of relatively difficult 2nd-year comprehensive test papers. Next, she picked out the key knowledge for the 3rd year of junior high school and various test papers. Xia Jinyuan, who was standing next to her, wanted to give her some advice. However, when he saw her long and slender fingers swiping across the stack of test papers and comparing them, he knew that his advice was unnecessary. When Yi Qian picked up the 3rd-year revision questions, Xia Jinyuan was not surprised either. He raised his eyebrows slightly and the interest in his dark eyes intensified. Do you plan to finish all the revision this year? Xia Jinyuan asked with a smile as he came out of the library with all the materials and test papers. Do you plan to study a bunch of revision materials during the summer break? Yi Qian got into the car and turned to look at the huge stack of materials on the back seat. The corners of her mouth curled up slightly as she said casually, Yes, I'll give it a try. If I can devote all my time to training in the 3rd year of junior high school. Xia Jinyuan, who was starting the car, paused for a few breaths. When he looked at her again, there was a hint of surprise in his dark eyes. The 3rd year of junior high school. You mean you plan to finish all the 2nd and 3rd year textbooks by yourself in the first half of the year? Although he started working hard when he was 14 and was admitted to military school at 16, he did not completely study on his own. I do have such a plan. At present, it isn't a very difficult thing to do. I want to enter the provincial first high school. It's far from town. How could she waste her time? Yi Jian's arrangement for herself was almost harsh. What was hard work to her? How could she let down Grandpa Zhen and Principal Chen's painstaking efforts? Xia Jinyuan looked at her deeply. A pearl would always shine, and an unpolished jade would eventually become something useful. Her perseverance and patience were the foundation of her success. It would allow her to walk steadily to the peak of her life step by step. Work hard. Don't disappoint the efforts of the two seniors. If you can take each step steadily, it will be the greatest reward for them. Xia Jinyuan, who had already steadily driven the car to the city, spoke to Yi Jian in a gentle voice. Yi Jian was trying her best not to let him down and not to let her seniors down. Yi Jian nodded gently and picked up a set of test papers to read slowly. Chapter 95. Her jet black hair cascaded down her shoulders, and her delicate profile was so serious that Xia Jinyuan couldn't bear to speak anymore. His gaze inadvertently slid past her beautiful swan-like neck, lingering on it for a few seconds before he calmly looked away. Yi Qian, who was already captivated by the questions, didn't notice his gaze. Her fair and slender fingers would occasionally lightly swipe across the test paper as she worked on the last difficult question. At around 10:20, Xia Jinyuan started to get busy. The communicator in the car would occasionally beep with the sound of someone reporting work. Yi Qian, who had already finished a test paper, saw this and decided to sleep in the back seat before they got on the highway so as not to disturb his work. Xia Jinyuan, who was at work, was calm and deep. His innate noble temperament was reflected in his every word and action, and he was born with the demeanor of a leader. Confidence, calmness, seriousness. Yi Qian learned a lot about the qualities a soldier should have from him. Perhaps because she only slept for 2 to 3 hours last night, Yi Qian felt like she was listening to a lullaby as she listened to Xia Jinyuan's steady and deep voice. She slowly closed her eyes, and didn't even know when she fell asleep. By the time she woke up, the car had already exited the highway and entered the national highway, heading towards town. It happened to be 3 in the afternoon when they arrived in Fujian town. Yi Qian didn't go back to school, but went straight to the recruit assembly camp. There were 2 language classes in the afternoon, and teacher Ku probably didn't want to see her. I've packed everything and this. Xia Jinyuan didn't drive the car into the camp, but parked it outside. He opened the trunk of the car and took out a bag with the words, Xinhua Bookstore, printed on it. Inside the bag were a few military books he bought yesterday. There are 4 books here that you can take a look at. They're all basic military knowledge. Yi Qian realized that the basic military books she saw in the car yesterday were actually for her. She didn't refuse and only hesitated for a moment before accepting them. She smiled and thanked him graciously. After his car drove out of her sight, Yi Qian looked at the books he gave her and sighed softly before walking back to the camp. After returning to the dorm, she placed her test papers on the bookshelf one by one. When she was about to organize the 4 books Xia Jinyuan gave her, she opened the bag and saw the file she saw in his hands at the Public Security Bureau. It was folded neatly and sandwiched between the books. Yi Qian. Her name was written forcefully on the portfolio. Her handwriting was just like her. Looking at it, one could feel a sense of coldness assaulting one's senses. Yi Jian's fingers gently pinched the file, and a dazzling light suddenly burst out from her starry eyes. Her little face instantly bloomed like a peach blossom, bright and dazzling. The silver wire. The wire. The wire. It was as if she couldn't wait to open it. She held the coiled silver wire in her hand and gently uncoiled it one by one. The front and back ends of the wire skillfully wrapped around her left and right hands. The cool touch seemed to seep into her heart. Just like last night, she let the silver wire coil around her hands. It was as if she was holding a living thing in her hands. She could do whatever she wanted. With a soft whoosh, the silver thread pierced through the air and tightly wrapped around the bed frame. When Yi Jian's bright eyes retracted the silver thread, they were overflowing with splendor and elegance. When they moved, they were like peaches and plums, and when they were still, they were like orchids in an empty valley. He actually gave it to her. He took it out of the Public Security Bureau and gave it to her. Chapter 96. But the surprise only lasted for a moment. Very quickly, the radiance on her beautiful face faded and Dai Qing's brows furrowed slightly. Was it really okay to just give it to her like this? No, she had to ask him. Otherwise, she would feel uneasy even if she accepted it. Since Battalion Commander Yang was not around, Yi Qian simply carried her backpack and went to the school to look for Principal Chen. Principal Chen should know. From the campsite to the national highway, Yi Qian did not slow down at all. She kept running. In front of her, in a white van, a middle-aged man who looked like a teacher and was dressed decently happened to see the running figure in the rearview mirror. He noticed that the girl, who looked like a student, was only about the same distance behind the van even after they had driven for several kilometers. He said to the driver, "Old Huang, how many kilometers per hour are you driving? The girl behind you can almost catch up to you." 60 kilometers per hour. Although Fujian town is lagging behind, there is still a lot of traffic. Don't think it's slow. Driver Huang explained with a smile. He could not see the running figure, so he did not understand why the middle-aged man was teasing him. When the middle-aged man heard this, he said to the two teachers sitting behind him in surprise, "Quick, look behind you. That girl has already run several kilometers behind the van. The distance is about the same as before. Her endurance is amazing." The two teachers with serious expressions pushed open the window and looked behind them. They were also surprised. She looks like a student. But Fujian Town Middle School is still in class. Student, skipping class? A female teacher in her 40s asked, "Principal Chow, why don't we stop the van? If she's a student, she can come with us. What do you think?" Yi Qian did not expect to be able to hitch a ride after running for so long. After she got into the van, Principal Chow looked at the girl who was only breathing slightly and teased her again. "Student, you jumped into the van so boldly. Aren't you afraid that we will take you away?" After he asked, the two teachers sitting with Yi Qian looked at her with smiles and waited for her answer with interest. "You don't smell like chalk dust, but you have black and red ink on your hands. There is also red ink on your thumb. Let me guess, you should be the principal," Yi Qian said with a smile. His words stunned Principal Chow. "You can tell what position it is from this?" "Of course. When I got on the car, this teacher even smiled politely at you. I can tell that she respects you very much." Why did he say that the middle-aged woman beside him was a teacher? The answer was obvious. She had the smell of chalk dust on her. Principal Chow was already laughing out loud. "Then I might also be the dean." Before he finished speaking, Principal Chow thought of something and laughed even louder. There aren't many humorous deans in the dean's office. I say, "Student, your observation skills are pretty good." Since they had already guessed that he was the principal, there was no need to guess who Song Laosher and Zhu Laosher were. Actually, Yi Qian had not only guessed that he was the principal, he could also vaguely guess which school he was from. The person who came to Fujian Town Middle School at this time should be the principal of the provincial first high school. Principal Chen was already waiting at the school gate. When Yi Qian got out of the van, he was shocked. Why did the little girl come with old Chow? The two principals were already exchanging greetings. Yi Qian bowed slightly to the two teachers. It seemed that he would disturb Principal Chen after he was done with his work. He did not go to the classroom. Instead, he went to Jiasen's dormitory and waited for the last class to end. Chapter 97. I just bumped into a student from your school. She's not bad. As soon as he entered the office, Principal Chow mentioned Yi Qian, who he had bumped into in the car. He looked very interested. Her endurance is not bad. Is she a sports special student? He admired Yi Qian. Principal Chen also felt proud. He smiled and said, "Yi Qian. Her name is Yi Qian. Old Chow, your taste is still as sharp as ever." He turned around and handed a cup of tea to Principal Chow. "Try this. It's a new tea from the mountains." The two principals had known each other for many years, so there was no need for formalities. They were more familiar with each other like old colleagues. "It's good tea. It's not any worse than the tea outside." Principal Chow took a sip and smiled at his old colleague who wanted to change the topic. "Come, let's continue talking about Yi Qian. Our country has achieved good results in sports competitions in the past 2 years. However, we still have some regrets in track and field, long-distance running, and sprinting. I think Yi Qian is a good seedling in this area. She can definitely develop in this direction. Principal Chow, who was an athlete, had always liked to explore the potential of students in sports in various secondary schools. If he nurtured them well, they would not only bring glory to the school, but also to the country. As the top high school in the province, the sports special students from First High School had all achieved good results in various competitions. A few students had even made it to the university games and achieved amazing results. However, Principal Chen was not very interested in this. He took a sip of tea and smiled. This child is indeed not bad. She is excellent in all aspects. However, I don't plan to let her achieve good results in sports. Why is that? Principal Chow said in surprise. This is not your style, Ulchen. Downstairs in the office. The arrival of the two teachers from First High School made the teachers in the office very happy. This showed how much importance First High School placed on this competition. The stacks of test papers that were brought over from the province's number 1 high school were distributed to the class teachers of the second and third year classes. Suddenly, the entire office was filled with the smell of books and ink. It really became a sea of learning. When Teacher Ke came in, he saw Class 1's homeroom teacher, Teacher Lu, actively recommending several top students in his class. His face was sharp and mean, and he snorted coldly. Then, he changed his face and walked over with a smile. When Teacher Lu saw her, she smiled and said, "Teacher Song, this is Teacher Ku from Class 2. Yi Ying and Yi Qian are Teacher Ku's students." At the mention of Yi Qian, the smile on Teacher Ku's face was quite deep, but when he heard Yi Qian's name, his smile froze. Teacher Lu should be done with his work, right? Do you mind if I speak to Teacher Song? With a fake smile, Teacher Ku stared at Teacher Lu, who thought that he had given her a difficult problem. She smiled coldly and said, "Let me speak to the students in my class. I'm afraid Teacher Lu doesn't know much about them." The teachers in the office were used to her sarcastic tone. Teacher Lu smiled disapprovingly and was busy distributing the test papers from First High School to the teachers of each subject. Mr. Song from First High School frowned slightly. His impression of Mr. Ku suddenly became much worse. As a teacher, he didn't say much, but his attitude was a little cold. Chapter 98. Yi Qian, who was in the dormitory, had no idea that Teacher Ku was trying her best to discredit her. She said to Jiasun, "I bought a few sets of test papers. Let's do them together tomorrow. There are midterm exams next week, and the provincial high school exams on Saturday, Sunday, and Sunday. It's going to be a little hard to endure for 4 consecutive days." She even sighed, which made Jiasun roll her eyes. All right. You're the most stressful person in class. You even took leave. You don't know how dark Teacher Ku's expression is today. The whole class is living in fear and trepidation, afraid of provoking her bad luck. Zhang Na, who was in the same dormitory as her, said emotionally, "None of us dare to go near her. Yi Qian, the whole class is waiting for you to come back and destroy Teacher Ku's dark expression." "Are you sure I can do it?" Yi Qian raised her eyebrows and smiled at the girls who nodded in agreement. "I didn't go to the classroom because I was afraid that you would be washed away by the storm. That's why I waited for you in the dormitory." The students more or less knew that Yi Qian and Teacher Ku did not have a good teacher-student relationship. Hearing this, they all laughed coquettishly. Sometimes they really admired Yi Qian. She was the only one who could withstand Teacher Ku's gaze. If it were any other student, their legs would have turned to jelly, or they would have transferred classes. Yi Ying's voice came from outside. She was still full of confidence. The girls in the dormitory snorted at the same time and said to Yi Qian, "Recently, Gao Yang has been coming to the classroom from time to tutor us. The two of them are sitting together openly. In the end, Teacher Ke even told us to learn from them. It can't be helped. Those two have always been in the top 5 of the cohort." Zhang Na snorted in dissatisfaction and rolled her eyes. It's obvious that they're in love at a young age. The pettiness of a little girl could be seen at a glance. Yi Qian pursed her lips and laughed softly. It was already dinner time for the school. When they reached the cafeteria, and Jiasun gently poked Yi Qian's forearm with her finger. Do you see, do you see? She's smiling like a flower. I also suspect that the two of them are dating. At the entrance of the cafeteria, the smiling Yi Ying and the tall and cold Gao Yang walked in together. The two of them immediately attracted countless gazes with various meanings. The people involved did not seem to care at all. They chatted and laughed as they walked towards Yi Qian and the others. It was inevitable that they would bump into each other. As soon as Gao Yang saw Yi Qian, he remembered how she had kicked him and his car. His cold face revealed a trace of uneasiness as he said to Yi Ying, "Go line up over there. There are fewer people." Yi Ying, who had always been scheming, glanced at Gao Yang's face and narrowed her beautiful eyes. Why do I feel like he and Yi Qian are hiding something from me? He smiled naturally and generously. It's okay, it's the same no matter where you line it up. Didn't the head of teaching say that? After dinner, let's hurry to the teacher's office. Let's queue here. After she finished speaking, she naturally tugged on Gao Yang's sleeve and lined up behind Yi Qian. In that instant, Jiasun understood why Yi Qian said that she was not simple. If she were in Yi Qian's shoes, she would feel uncomfortable standing in the same place as someone who had bad blood with them. Fine, Yi Qian was not simple either. Seeing her nonchalant expression, Jiasun shrugged, indicating that she did not care either. Chapter 99. Principal Chen, Principal Chao, and the teachers from the provincial first high school were all sitting in the meeting room after dinner. At the same time, there were also the homeroom teachers from the second and third grades. No one said anything. They were all waiting for the two principals to finish reading the list. Teacher Ku, who was sitting in the middle, froze when he saw Headmaster Chen flipping through the registration form for the second year of middle school. He had never seen the headmaster attend any competitions in the past. Why was he looking at it this time? There were 7 grades in the second grade. 5 to 6 students from each grade would sign up for the competition. They were all the top 10 students in the class. Headmaster Chen flipped through all the registration forms for the second year of junior high school, but he didn't see Yi Jian's registration form. Teacher Ku, can I see the name list of Yi Qian's students? Principal Chen closed the registration form and looked sharply at Teacher Ku, who had repeatedly made things difficult for Yi Qian. He said in a deep voice, "Teacher Ku, please hand it over personally." Teacher Ku's face was pale. She stood up quickly. Under the gaze of her colleagues, her face burned painfully. "I'm sorry. I forgot to take it. I'll go get it right away." It was as if they were fleeing for their lives. 5 minutes later, Principal Chao held Yi Qian's registration form and said with interest, "She's very confident. She signed up for everything." He glanced at Teacher Ku, who had not lifted her head since she came in. He chuckled and said, "If she's really an all-rounder, it's not impossible to make an exception and admit her. She doesn't know anything." Teacher Ku, who had her head lowered, panicked when she heard this. She looked up and explained, "Principal Chao, Yi Qian is a bad student. There's no such thing as a top student, and there's no such thing as a bad student. Teacher Ku, please be careful with your words." Principal Chao interrupted her with a smile and said kindly, "Whether she's a bad student or not, we'll know in the exam today. The self-study session is at 7 o'clock. Teachers, please get ready. The first mock exam will be at 7 o'clock sharp." No one listened to her explanation. They all stood up to inform their students. In the dean's office, Teacher Ke handed over the 2 test papers. "The 2 of you are representing the school. Take a look at this first. After 7 o'clock, you will have a mock exam." "Thank you, Director Ku." When Yi Ying heard this, she could not wait to reach out her hand. However, she was pulled back by Gao Yang. He said coldly, "Are you asking us to cheat?" When he said that, Yi Ying became anxious. "Gao Yang, what nonsense are you spouting? Dean Ku wants us to do better. He wants us to look at the questions in advance, not the answers. Wasn't reading the questions in advance cheating?" Yi Qian, who was personally informed by Principal Chen, smiled faintly. "Don't worry, I've said it before. Yi Ying is the opponent I need to defeat. So, How could I let her have the chance to defeat me? So what if she has seen the test papers? I can still win beautifully. Her face was full of confidence, and there was even a hint of disdain in her jet-black eyes. Principal Chen, who was originally a little worried, raised his eyebrows and laughed heartily. If you want to suppress your opponent, little girl, then you have to give him a hard time. Even if he does, he has to be below you. This was only natural. How could he let Ying have her way? In the temporary classroom of Grade 12 Class 1, Yiqian took out one of the test papers and handed the rest to the students behind him. He picked up a pen and started writing. Welcome to Legends of Cultivation, audiobooks, where we bring ancient fantasy to life through storytelling. Follow the rise of heroes who defy fate, unlock mystical powers, and battle across celestial realms. Our audiobooks are crafted for fans of Chinese cultivation novels, filled with battles, breakthroughs, and legendary artifacts. Subscribe and be part of an unforgettable journey into the realm of immortality.